For right pronunciation, it is highly significant to learn the right phonemes, that is, the pronunciation sounds of Gurbani. Please note that phonemes is a term used for sounds of pronunciation that help to differentiate different grammatical situations. Let's discuss what specific grammatical inferences are feasible to listeners from such phonemes. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Based on emphasis, the phonemes of Gurbani are of 4 types. The standard emphasis phonemes, the normal sound emphasis and duration of letters of Gurmukhi script, the hyper emphasis phonemes. The emphasis level is higher and there is more duration than standard phonemes. The hypo emphasis phonemes. Emphasis level is lower and there is lesser duration than standard phonemes. The very hypoemphasis phonemes, emphasis level is even lower and there is lesser duration than hypophonemes. One or more of these phonemes are used in Gurbani pronunciation to signify specific grammatical situations of Gurbani language. Before taking up emphasis phonemes of each sign, let's study the emphasis phonemes uninfluenced by any sign. In other words, signless phonemes. One important fact herein is that although phoneme, that is the pronunciation sound itself, is signless, that is not impacted by lav, dulav, onkar, dulankar, etc. However, the signless phonemes can reflect a grammatical situation wherein signs have been used. For example, signless hyperemphasis phoneme is used to reflect onkad of nanna in manna, manna, and onkad of kakka in nanaka, manna, nanaka. Herein, although the grammatical situation incorporates the onkad sign, however, the corresponding phoneme to reflect this specific grammatical situation is signless hyperemphasis, hyper, manna, nanaka. The signless emphasis phonemes in Gurbani are of 4 types. The signless standard emphasis phonemes, the signless hyperemphasis phonemes, the signless hypoemphasis phonemes, and the signless very hypoemphasis phonemes. Let's discuss signless standard emphasis phonemes of Gurbani. The signless standard emphasis phonemes are produced in 3 specific situations. The first specific situation is when first letter of a word is a signless consonant, as kakka in karaha. In this situation, there would be pronunciation of the standard emphasis phoneme of kakka, like karaha. The second specific situation is when the in-between letter of a word is a signless consonant, as rara in karaha. In this situation, there would be pronunciation of the standard emphasis phoneme of rara, like karaha, karaha. The third specific situation is when last letter of a word is haha and it is signless too. In this situation, there would be pronunciation of standard phoneme of haha, like karaha, karaha. Now let's discuss the signless hyperemphasis phonemes. The signless hyperemphasis phonemes are produced in 3 specific situations. First is when last letter of a word is a consonant but with an onkad, like kakka with onkad in nanaka. The significance of this phoneme is that it emphasizes singular and masculine character of the noun, which here is Nanak, not Nanak, Nanak, for the listener of the Gurbani. It is important to note that such nouns are not associated with any verb. The second situation is when last letter of the case, which is called Karak, has either Sihari sign or Onkar sign, and such word is always associated with a verb. In Gurbani grammar, when a noun gets associated with a verb, such noun gets transformed into case. There are different types of cases in Gurbani grammar. There is Sihari sign or Onkar sign associated with the last consonant in different types of cases. By the right pronunciation of the cases of Gurbani, listeners of Gurbani get informed about the transformation of a noun into a case. This is achieved by hyper-emphasis phoneme of the last letter of the case that has Onkar or Sihari, and then also clubbing the pronunciation of the case with a verb like Sabad kare, Sabad kare. For example, in Nanak kat kat eko vartada Sabad kare pargas. For the listener of Gurbani, the last consonant Dada of the case Sabad has to be attributed hyper-emphasis phoneme and is also clubbed with the related verb kare as Sabad kare, Sabad kare, so that listener is fairly informed about the transformation of the noun into the case. Another situation is when last letter of a numeral adjective is with a Sihari sign, like in Char. The Gurbani reference is Chara Nadi Agni Asarala. Accordingly, the hyper-emphasis phoneme for the last consonant Rara with Sihari sign as Char. For the listener of Gurbani, this pronunciation indicates that the word is a numeral adjective and not Char. It's Char, not Char, which has a different meaning. Let's discuss the signless hypoemphasis phonemes. The signless hypoemphasis phonemes are produced in three specific situations. The first specific situation is when the word is a plural noun whose last letter is a signless consonant, like Tatta in Bhagat, Bhagat. If this letter is attributed hyperemphasis phoneme like Bhagat, it would signify singular and masculine noun to the listener of Gurbani. Therefore, the hypoemphasis phoneme is significant to convey the plural characteristic of the noun to listeners of Gurbani. Pagat, not Pagata. Pagata is singular, Pagat is plural. The second specific situation is when a word is used as an addressal, Sambodhan, like Datar. We know that Datar signifies God, therefore is singular. So should always have Onkar sign on the last consonant. Yet, in Gurbani grammar, when Gurbani addresses Datar, the last letter is rendered signless like Datar. There has to be suitable pronunciation to inform the listener of Gurbani about that. When there is hypoemphasis phoneme of the last letter of a singular masculine noun, it informs the listener of Gurbani that this is an addressal. The Datar becomes Datar. Man becomes Man. Nanak becomes Nanak. The third specific situation is when last letter of a feminine noun is a consonant with a Sihari sign. Like in feminine noun Gat, the hypoemphasis phoneme is for Sihari sign. Accordingly, instead of hyperemphasis phoneme of the Sihari sign of the last letter, rather hypoemphasis phoneme signifies the listener of the Gurbani that the word is a feminine noun. Similarly, hypoemphasis phoneme of Mukat conveys to the listener of Gurbani the feminine character of Mukat. let's discuss the signless very hypo emphasis phoneme. The very hypo emphasis phoneme is produced in a very specific situation. We know the uniform impact of halant sign is to reduce any phoneme of the letters, inclusive of signs, if any, to half. Now, phoneme of last signless consonant of a word that already has hypoemphasis phoneme, when also has a halant sign, its phoneme is reduced to very hypoemphasis, like mamma with halant in tum. The Gurbani reference is tumjo naik. It's not tumjo naik, tumjo naik, because of the halant. Very hypoemphasis. Tumjo naik achaho antarjami. So far, we have only discussed signless phonemes of Gurbani. We have yet to discuss phonemes based on every sign of Gurbani to understand what all is feasible by right pronunciation of Gurbani that can help the listeners of Gurbani. We can summarize the signless Gurbani phonemes using further this example of tum. When the last consonant of word has onkar sign, then hyperemphasis phoneme is tum. And when the last consonant of the word is signless, then hypoemphasis phoneme is tum. And when the last consonant of the word also bears a halant, then very hypoemphasis phoneme is tum. Tum, tum, tum. Tum, tum, tum. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.